Efficiency and productivity have helped humans advance from medicine, technology, and global trade. But when these values dominate without empathy, we risk creating systems that treat people like numbers. And recognizing this imbalance is a first step to resisting it, because even awareness is a form of change. Working corporate feels like dating a psychopath, and I'm not even exaggerating. Here's why. At first, they charm you with promises, and then later, they extract as much as they can from you. They blame you for problems, and then they only focus on their own benefits and survival. If this feels like your situation, and you can intuitively see the correlation between the two parallels, you're not alone, and you're definitely not crazy for feeling this way. So let's break down why corporate life feels this way. But first, let's make it clear what the definition of psychopath really is. So, a psychopath is a term commonly used in psychology to describe a pattern of personality traits associated with severe deficits of empathy, remorse, and emotional depth, along with manipulative, callous, and often antisocial behavior. Not only that, psychopaths can appear charming, calm, and highly controlled, which differentiates them from more impulsive, antisocial behavior. And to be clear, this isn't a clinical diagnosis. It's a metaphor for a reoccurring relational pattern that many people experience in corporate systems. And I want to make it clear that not every organization is toxic. Some of them truly try to balance profit with empathy. But on a systemic level, most corporations often act like psychopaths. They're charming at first, but then they become cold and calculating and focus on their own best interests and benefits at the expense of other people. So let's take a look at the parallels. Psychopaths charm at first, and most corporations do the same thing with glossy recruitment ads, a promise of career growth, and the infamous "We're Family" slogan. Then, psychopaths exploit others to maximize gain. Big corporations do the same thing too. They prioritize profit, efficiency, and their own protection over the well-being of other people. They're cold, self-preserving, and overly logical. Here's the parallel. It's about survival at all costs, even at the cost of other people's health and well-being. Corporations are also the biggest endorsers and advocates for hustle culture. They have brainwashed us into thinking that hustle culture is going to get us somewhere. They sell you the dream of just work harder, climb the corporate ladder, and someday you will be able to live your dream life, whatever that means. And when we comply and buy into the ideology of hustle culture, we are essentially selling not just our time, but our soul to these corporations just to survive and make ends meet. It feels soulless. It feels like slavery with extra steps. And eventually, we get burned out. Then, just like psychopaths, these corporations reframe the problem as your fault. They tell workers to just work harder and manage your stress instead of addressing the systemic causes of burnout. In individuals high in psychopathic and antisocial traits, empathy is often performed when it serves a purpose rather than felt. On a systemic level, corporations reward the same type of behavior. PR projects, philanthropy, and so-called corporate social responsibility are often less about helping people and more about protecting the brand, managing reputation, and reducing risks. Now, I want to talk about the historical and sociological context and how it got this way. Many corporations don't start out cold and exploitative. Small businesses often start off with innovation, creativity, community, and genuine care. But as organizations grow, the system often rewards profit-driven behaviors and survival-driven behaviors, protecting shareholders, dominating markets, and minimizing risks. This means that relational empathy is gradually replaced by calculation. In smaller communities, We lived in tribes where trust and accountability were natural. You knew your neighbor, you knew who grew your food, you knew who built your house, and so on. Empathy was natural because relationships were personal. As corporations grew, we became detached from those connections. Karl Marx called this alienation. We're separated from the source of our labor and the products that we consume. Emil Durkheim describes this as enemy, which describes a sense of alienation from society, characterized by feelings of hopelessness, loss of purpose, and isolation when society gets too big or too complex. When we don't see the faces behind the things that we consume, it becomes easier for systems and sometimes for individuals to disconnect, dehumanize, and prioritize number over people. This doesn't mean that we are to blame. The problem is structural. When detachment becomes the norm, corporations start acting in a way that looks psychopathic, cold, calculating, and survival-driven. And the reality is that the potential for disconnection exists in all of us. If we're not careful, the same alienation and enemy that drives corporations can shape how we treat each other. It values efficiency over empathy, productivity over humanity. So here are some examples. Healthcare systems value speed and numbers over listening. The patient leaves unheard, even if the problem is serious. In customer service, agents are told to resolve calls in under 3 minutes. The metrics looks good, but the customer felt rushed and dismissed. Workplace burnout. Employees are praised for working overtime and hustle, while resting and taking care of their well-being are seen as a burden. In education, schools focus on test scores and standardized results, but neglecting curiosity, creativity, actual practical skills, and emotional intelligence. Efficiency and productivity have helped humans advance, from medicine, technology, and global trade. But when these values dominate without empathy, we risk creating systems that treat people like numbers. And recognizing this imbalance is a first step to resisting it, because even awareness is a form of change. The real challenge for us is this: how do we hold on to community, empathy, and humanity in a system that often rewards the opposite? I'm curious to know your thoughts in the comments below, and thank you for watching.